Here. And Councilman Kravitz is absent.
Okay, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do you have anybody in the public that wishes to speak at this time? I see no one. All right, can I get approval of the previous meeting summary from January 26, 2026? Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We have presentations and status updates. The first is the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood Action Plan. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Vasquez. I'm a senior planning coordinator with the City of Tampa City Planning Department. And today I'm presenting to you on the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood Action Plan, which is a plan that my department recently completed for the Sulphur Springs neighborhood, which of course borders the Hillsborough. So the background for the plan, we created this plan as a long-term kind of guide for the neighborhood. We wanted to have clear and action-oriented recommendations, really with a focus on improving quality of life and quality of services and amenities in the community. And then I also wanted to give a shout out that the plan was recently selected for a neighborhood planning award merit by the Florida chapter of the American Planning Association. So I will be accepting that award this year at the Florida Planning Conference down in Miami. So we are very honored by that recognition by the APA. So the plan kicked off in December 2024, and the first phase of the plan was really focused on data gathering, existing conditions assessment, and getting that initial community feedback. In phase two, we started to, shape that data, kind of think about formulating recommendations, formulating themes, and thinking about how we are going to make those action-oriented recommendations in that long-term plan. And then in phase three, we had that vision and we had the principles for the plan, and we kind of got checked it with the community and finalized the recommendations in the plan in February 2026. We did a lot of community engagement as part of this plan, and these are just some of the things that we heard. For this board in particular, we did hear a lot about integrating the river, and especially the riverfront parks. There are 3 riverfront parks in the Sulphur Springs neighborhood. That's River Tower Park, Sulphur Springs Park, and Van Wagner Park, which is then just a little bit further down the river. And the community was very interested in how can we improve those parks generally, but also really improve both the physical and kind of like psychological connections to the river as well. Because whether there are few physical access points to the river in the neighborhood, but even beyond that, there's a lot of psychological barriers for how the residents think that they can access and use the river, which is such a major asset of the community. So that is something that we took a look at in the plan. So from all that community engagement, we created this vision statement for Sulphur Springs, which is that Sulphur Springs is a resilient, welcoming community where history and progress create a vibrant, sustainable future, serving as a model of community-driven revitalization. Again, we created these principles throughout the phases of our community engagement. We did a ton of community engagement, not only our traditional community workshops, but we also showed up at community events. We did door-to-door outreach. We did pop-up at community hotspots, including food pantries and things of that nature, to make sure that we had a wide variety of input of the plan. And again, of particular interest to this board, probably that resilient nature and neighborhood principle, which just means that as we were going through the plan and creating these recommendations and creating that long-term vision, we're doing so with it in mind that the natural assets of the neighborhood were extremely important to the residents, and we want to make sure to preserve, enhance, and honor that fact. The report itself is organized into 4 different sections, first being that existing conditions assessment, second being the visioning and community engagement. And then the bulk of the report has the playbook action areas, which are the top 10 topics that kind of rose to the top throughout that community engagement, throughout our formulation of the plan. And then we also, the playbook action areas really focus on the steps that the city can take, but we also wanted to highlight community-led actions because community-driven change is also one of the principles of the plan. So we wanted to make sure to give a guidebook, not only to the city, but to the residents and employees that care about the neighborhood. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through this slide because most of the topics here are not as relevant to this board, but I am happy to go back and answer any questions about them at the end of the presentation. So the first 5 playbook action areas have to do with a community council for those community-driven actions, creating capacity, strengthening capacity through partnerships between public agencies or private-public partnerships, expanding affordable housing, targeting redevelopment sites, and ensuring that the neighborhood has access to fresh food. On this slide, we also have safety and connectivity. Some of that is related to trails that are in the parks currently, and expanding upon those trails, as well as, of course, safe routes throughout the neighborhood, especially to the schools, economic and workforce development. Most relevant to this board, park and river access. And then enhancing neighborhood character and community safety also kind of goes hand in hand with that, because what we're hearing most with that is the desire for community cleanup, the desire for safety improvements in parks, those riverfront parks. And so those are all things that we are taking into consideration and that were outlined in the playbook action areas. Each of the playbook action areas has an accompanying case study and some visualizations. This case study and this visualization was taken from the Parks and River Access Playbook Action Areas. So the case study is about Roundwork Jacksonville, which was a public nonprofit partnership that Jacksonville did to restore creeks and estuaries and different watersheds, as well as enhancing those parks, creating those trails, trail connections, and just enhancing the overall kind of green space of Jacksonville. So we wanted to take some inspiration from that. And then on the right-hand side, you have a rendering of, taking community feedback and also hearing what is also possible through our Parks and Recreation Department of a reimagining of how we can better utilize River Tower Park. So including more passive recreation and more just purposeful design to make the park more accessible so that people can enjoy that park and enjoy the beautiful riverfront area. So the river-related actions. Each of the playbook actions have primary, secondary, and long-term actions. The primary, of course, being the ones that we take first, building on that with the secondary, and then long-term are kind of, a little bit pie in the sky at times, but long-term ideas that really mattered to the community, and we felt that were very important to include in the plan. So primary are pretty straightforward here, expanding access to the river and to recreation on the river. That included kayak launches, fishing spots, boardwalks, and things of that nature, just more actual amenities that are more straightforward. Additionally, advancing programming at the riverfront parks. On the slide, you'll see a picture from the Springs Market, which was a farmer's market that was hosted, it was earlier this year. And being able to do more events like that and even expanding on that, something like a music fest. They do some programming at the riverfront parks, but the community is something very interested in having more, and I think also integrating the importance of the environmental aspects, the history and the nature, and really just making the most of these beautiful assets the neighborhood has that are currently very underutilized. Secondary, really all of these actions have to do with creating a better network of connection through trails, along those trails, kind of highlighting the history, highlighting the environmental assets, and just recognizing what do we have, what is very clearly missing, and doing those kind of analyses. Long term, we want to think about finishing the construction of the Green Artery, which has a key connection through these parks, River Tower Park, Sulphur Springs Park, along the river. And then it's even envisioned perhaps a future Riverwalk extension in this area. You have not only the river, but of course you have the springs, the namesake of the neighborhood. And there are also several other springs in the neighborhood. How can we think about highlighting and connecting these really beautiful assets the same way that we do downtown? The Riverwalk, goes past Eulalie over in the Armature Works area, and there was a lot of work and thought put into the rehabilitation of those springs and how to highlight and create access to recreation, passive recreation opportunities around these springs, even if we can no longer swim in them, like many of the residents, recall, mostly their parents talking about it. They themselves never quite got a chance to swim in the springs most of the time. The next steps, $150,000 was allocated by Tampa City Council to work on implementation for the plan. There are really three large areas that we are using this funding for, one being small business development. And then the second and third pots or projects rather are relevant to the board because the Sulphur Springs Stewards, that is kind of the shape that the community-driven aspect of this plan has taken. The Sulphur Springs Stewards is really focused on the work that our community engagement consultant has done in the community to identify people in their different passion areas and who's a leader right now, who just kind of wants to be informed and involved, and who cares about it. So they want to stay in the loop, but maybe right now they're not ready to move towards action. And the point of Sulphur Springs Stewards is to get those people all kind of ready to move towards action and in the roles that they feel that they can best support. And it has naturally developed around several different working groups. And as you can imagine, several of those working groups do have to do with the environment, with the river, with the community cleanup. And so we are very much looking forward to seeing how the community coalesces around those issues and especially can, in turn, advocate to the city, to the different public agencies for what they are looking for and help bring forward that vision for their community. The community care is just hyper-focusing in on that neighborhood cleanup. There are community-driven neighborhood cleanups with Tampa Bay Beautiful, but also we are additionally supporting cleanup through additional mobile pickup weeks. Sweep weeks is what we call them at the city, where people can put their bulk items out or have those picked up for free. So we are working hard with the community to kind of move forward those actions. In addition to that, we're continuing to coordinate with our technical working group departments. In this picture on the slide is a tour that we did with Swift Mud of the, not going to remember the word, I know there's a word for it, but the different springs and sinks that all feed into the spring, into Sulphur Springs. And that was a very interesting tour that we got that, told us how complicated and complex it would be to restore Sulphur Springs. But we invited, it was kind of up for grabs, any members of our technical working group, any staff that wanted to come along on that tour to learn more about those facts and that information, if they, were cared about that and passionate about that. As you can see, we got a large group that came with us from many different city departments. So we're continuing to work with those city departments, notably, of course, sustainability and resiliency, parks and recreation, stormwater, water, and keeping each other apprised of the work that's already being done. Talking about how can we support their proposals for projects or programs that support the vision of the plan, as well as kind of holding each other accountable to, hey, you were involved in the development of this plan, and can you please help push forward the vision of this plan in their own department. So that has been a very helpful thing that we have worked on in the city. So that is all that I have for you today. I am available for any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Yes.
Very nice job. Thank you for that update. One of the primary goals was to advance programming. Help me understand what that looks like.
Yeah, so the exact language of the action. I always, when I'm putting together a presentation, I debate, do you put all the language or do you just kind of speak to it? So I appreciate you giving me a chance to kind of speak to it, but it was really, the community very much wants more events to take place in these riverfront parks, in the parks generally, but especially in the riverfront parks, because those are kind of underutilized in their minds. So when I say events, it's the whole range of events. It can be from farmers market to music festival to, maybe it's just a summer camp that's doing, bird watching or things like that. The action does specify balancing having those events with the environmental quality and being mindful to not, of course, then over activate and degrade the environmental quality of the parks.
Right. I think my questioning was more along the lines of when they say they want programming or that there's going to be programming, that's not something the city and or county is providing. That's like them driven and they like rent the space or what is that? I guess I was trying to figure out what that looks like. How do you regulate that? Because coming from the nonprofit space for so many years, it's pretty labor intensive to put on any event that's outdoors in a park.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think that there is a request of the city to create more like city-led programming. So in that example of like summer camps, it's like, okay, how can we work with our parks and recreation infrastructure that already exists in the neighborhood? Because there are also several other community centers to bring, kids to the parks and have programming in those parks. But on the community-led side of things, we're examining how can we maybe reduce the, I don't want to speak necessarily out of turn, but I guess the request that I'm getting from the community is how can we reduce permitting burdens, whether either the cost or like just actually having to go through the amount of permits that are required. Things like, oh, you have to have a generator, if it's X, Y, Z. Or there's a community cleanup actually that's being hosted this Friday. And we wanted to have a cooling tent, so like a tent that then just have like misting. And it was like, because you have a structure that is now considered an event, and that now requires this whole other slew of permits. So being able to take a look at like, what are some of the regulations that we have that are creating barriers for the community action that we are really working hard to like put power behind.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Nice job.
Thanks. Great presentation. I appreciate the focus on Sulphur Springs. It's a neighborhood that I don't want to say forgotten, but deserves a lot more attention. And I know at one point, the former neighborhood president told me years ago, this is the poorest neighborhood in the city. I don't know if that's a fact by dollar amount, but I know that, I looked at words like history, opportunity, safe, connected. I mean, that was in the presentation. That's true. I saw food security. One of the biggest things is we don't have access to clean and healthy food, or the grocery store is very far away. But on an idea that I had in River Tower Park was, my friends and I were talking about the other day, the drive-in that used to be there was Tower Drive-In, and it closed in the 80s. But I'm on the Tampa Theater Board, and they'll do movies in the park, like at Curtis Sixon and other places. I go, why not do a pop-up? They have the inflatable screens or whatever they set up, do a movie in the park and set it up like a drive-in. Meaning, back then it was you pull up at a drive-in and you put the speaker and like hang it onto your car. But now you just tune in your radio to the frequency. It might sound silly, but it's how potent nostalgia is. Because, I mean, if you talk to my mother and let's say we go to the Krispy Kreme on Florida, near there, she'll say, I remember we used to go here and this was here and this was across the street and, but people start thinking back to, old memories. And yes, it's a drive-in movie, it's a drive-in movie theater, but it helps people remember, wow, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I used to come here and it kind of sparks that. So, and I'll stop with this. The previous mayoral administration, when he would do the state of the city, I remember in 2014, Buckhorn did the state of the city at Armature Works, and it was basically gutted out and it was a shell. They hadn't begun construction yet. And then we took a tour of Eulalie, of what it was gonna be, and the springs being restored. And I mean, look at it now. He also did a state of the city in a historic building downtown, and that was to showcase, hey, there's an opportunity here. And since then, the building was sold and whatnot. But again, when you bring attention to areas, people may have forgotten, or it's been too long, or they feel like, well, it's old and deteriorated. But to me, that says there's opportunity. And Sulphur Springs, I mean, like all the words that I listed that you put in your presentation, that's all important to, kickstarting that renaissance. Because we've seen it. I mean, I don't have to go down the list, but so many places in Tampa have been resurrected. Again, you put, love and attention and investment, and anything can happen. So you said pie in the sky, long term. So much has happened that I figured and I thought, I go, this would never come back. And now look at it. So again, I'm very hopeful for Sulphur Springs, and I'm glad for this great presentation. And we'll talk more at the city level. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
We don't need any motion since it's just a status right now. Okay, so next we have the TAC update with Jackie Julian. I think she's online. She's our TAC chair. If you want to take it away.
Yes, hi. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today. But good morning. And I'd like to add on to that drive-in. I loved the Florida Funland drive-in. That was one of the first dates me and my husband went to. He took me to that he grew up going to because he grew up in Tampa. And since it closed, I'm very, very sad. So I am 100% on board with reinventing the drive-in at the park idea. I think it's fabulous.
Thanks.
And for a summary, Diego, if I go off key or if I forget anything, please chime in. I'm still kind of new at this. But we have our March update. We had a presentation from SwiftMud regarding the hydrological update, which was very informative. All of the projects were found to be consistent. In May, we had a presentation from the City of Tampa regarding the sustainability and resiliency presentation, if I can say that without being tongue-tied. Kind of ties right into the whole Sulphur Spring thing as well regarding the sustainability, reinvention of the parks and such. Projects were found consistent through the recommendation. And in June, we also talked more about we had another presentation of sustainability and resiliency, which was department created by Mayor Castor. City of Tampa point of contact was Whit Raymer. They talked about the City of Tampa climate action and equality plan that they're working on. They talked about mapping the City of Tampa citywide watershed master plan for a 2027 goal. They also talked about updating the technical manual to improve stormwater ponds and systems to improve water quality around the city. Talked about expanding the City of Tampa Riverwalk. They talked about a new pilot test site for a new reef/habitat type of seawall product at the Blake High School. And we also talked about the River Tower and Sulphur Springs Park, upgrading the stormwater treatment facility there and some park improvements. And then we talked about the City of Tampa needing a seawall inventory for their City of Tampa owned park sites and mobility department sites for their own inventory for improvements. And then we talked about looking into Tampa Bay Coastal. And we also voted on the River Stewardship Award, which is up next on our agenda for today. Diego, did I miss anything?
No, you covered everything, Jackie.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No? All right. Next up, we have the 2026 River Stewardship Award selection. I see Temple Terrace Police Marine Unit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The TAC has nominated the Temple Terrace Police Department unit for the Hillsborough River Stewardship Award in recognition of its commitment to protecting the Hillsborough River through law enforcement, public education, environmental stewardship, and collaborative partnerships. The Hillsborough River is the defining natural resource of the city of Temple Terrace, providing drinking water, recreational opportunities, wildlife habitat, and a vital ecological corridor. Through an agreement with Hillsborough County's Sheriff's Office, the Marine Unit provides full-time marine patrol services and is responsible for marine, fish, wildlife enforcement along the Hillsborough River from the 40th Street Bridge in Tampa north to Nature's Classroom, which is located in unincorporated Hillsborough County. This extensive patrol area encompasses one of the region's most environmentally significant river sections and reflects the city's commitment to preserving this important watershed. The Marine Unit's contribution to river stewardship is demonstrated through its daily patrols, public education, enforcement of marine, fish, and wildlife laws, and coordination with local, county, and state partners. Officers patrol the river daily, educating the public about boating safety, while actively searching for poaching, illegal dumping, and other unlawful activities that threaten the river's natural resources and the public's safe enjoyment of the waterway. This consistent presence enhances public safety while helping to discourage activities that harm the river and its surrounding environment. The Marine Unit also serves as a vital resource to the city's River Watch Task Force, providing operational updates, identifying emerging concerns, and coordinating with city staff and partner agencies on issues affecting the Hillsborough River. One notable example of the Marine Unit's stewardship is its leadership in addressing derelict vessels within the Hillsborough River corridor. The Marine Unit has coordinated with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and the Hillsborough County to identify, investigate, and facilitate the removal of abandoned vessels that pose navigation hazards and environmental concerns. Through persistent interagency collaboration, multiple derelict boats were successfully removed from the river, improving both public safety and the river's ecological condition. Stewardship is defined not only by restoration projects or one-time initiatives, but by the consistent work required to protect a natural resource over time. Temple Terrace Police Department's Marine Unit exemplifies this principle through its daily presence of the Hillsborough River, its commitment to public education and safety, its enforcement of natural resource protection laws, and its collaborative leadership in addressing issues affecting the river. These sustained efforts have helped protect the ecological integrity, public safety, and recreational value of one of Hillsborough County's most treasured waterways, making the Marine Unit a deserving recipient of the Hillsborough River Stewardship Award, which will be presented at the Planning and Design Awards on October 29th. We're not having this nomination at the October meeting because there's just not enough time. So we are asking for your vote on it.
Well, sure.
So move to approve the Temple Terrace Department's Marine Unit for the 2026 River Stewardship Award selection.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. We'll congratulate them October 26th.
Yes.
In addition, TICO is one of the sponsors for the award ceremony. So one of the tables is for the River Board and the TAC members and the recipients. So if you are planning or want to attend, you could just let me know, and you don't have to.
Yeah, last year's event was great, so I look forward to it. Thanks. All right, next we have consistency determinations. Can we take one motion to approve 7A through J?
Yes, sir.
All right, so moved. We have a motion to approve, second from me. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. And any other business?
Sure, that's it.
All right, thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Super fast today. I'm gonna put this in my calendar.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I don't know if I go last year. I think I got.
It was great. It's great. No, it's great.
Well, I always like to do.
Like